My wife, Jill, and I decided to take a big step, moving from the cozy and familiar North Carolina to the noisy and fast-paced New York. This move was the result of my long-awaited promotion at the investment firm where I had been working hard for the past few years. The decision was not easy for us. North Carolina, with its green hills, slow pace of life, and warm atmosphere, has been our home since childhood. But looking at the prospects that this career leap opened up for me, we realized that we could not miss this opportunity. Besides, we were only a little over 20, children and serious family plans were still in the future. We decided that New York would be an exciting new adventure for us, a place where we could try ourselves in a new role and get a taste of city life. We agreed that we would spend a couple of years there and then perhaps return to our native land. New York greeted us in contrast. Majestic skyscrapers and bustling streets filled our souls with delight, but at the same time, the crazy pace of city life was slightly frightening. After a long search, we chose a small apartment in the city center. It was far from ideal, cramped rooms, old creaky parquet floors, but its location in the very heart of the metropolis compensated for all the shortcomings. We quickly learned to adapt to new realities, even if sometimes we had to sacrifice comfort. The apartment became our cozy corner, where in the evenings we discussed everything new we had learned about the city and made plans for the future. The work paid off. I gradually got used to the faster and more aggressive pace of business in New York. It was a completely different world compared to the relaxed atmosphere of my old office. The tension and demands of colleagues and clients tempered me, forced me to grow and adapt. Jill, in turn, faced a new reality. Accustomed to a quieter life in North Carolina, she quickly realized that being alone at home in an unfamiliar city was unbearable. To fill her free time, make new friends, and contribute to our overall budget, she took a job in retail. This gave her not only something to do, but also the opportunity to feel part of the city flow. Summer in New York turned out to be amazing. We tried to use every opportunity to spend time together and enjoy the atmosphere of the city. Central Park has become a place of inspiration and relaxation for us. We often walked there, exploring its green corners where we could forget about the noise and bustle. Our other favorite activity was going to baseball games. We chose cheap seats in the upper tiers of stadiums, but this did not stop us from enjoying every game. It turned out that Jill was an even bigger sports fan than I was, and her enthusiasm even ignited those sitting next to us. These moments were truly magical when the two of us, in a huge and still alien city, found simple joys that made our lives brighter. This is how we lived: a cramped apartment, a noisy city, work and walks in the park. New York embraced us, and we learned to cope with its challenges. At work, my immediate boss turned out to be Ty, a man who immediately made an impression on me. He was about 40, 10 years older than me. He was a tall man, almost 2 meters tall, dark-skinned, with a strong, confident posture that involuntarily inspired respect. His appearance was hard to miss. In terms of male aesthetics, he looked attractive, with regular facial features, a well-defined jawline and light stubble that gave him a charismatic and slightly cocky appearance. But what stood out most of all was his style. Ty was always dressed impeccably: perfectly fitting suits, immaculately ironed shirts, ties that emphasized his taste and ability to follow fashion. Even his cufflinks and watch seemed carefully chosen. From time to time, I heard various rumors about him from colleagues. Many, without hiding their skepticism, said that Ty had not earned his position entirely honestly. Some claimed that he became the boss thanks to his connections. Others hinted at hidden privileges, although no one knew the exact details. However, watching him at work, I could not find a single reason to question his professionalism. Ty was a born leader. He confidently led our team, knew how to approach each employee, and always remained calm, even in the most tense moments. It seemed that no challenge could knock him off balance. In addition, he easily communicated with clients, as if he had known them for many years. These people, with whom I sometimes had difficulty getting along, literally blossomed in his presence, joking, laughing, and trusting him with even the most difficult tasks. External gloss, however, was not his only strong point. Ty had a natural confidence and charisma that didn't need big words. His voice was deep, enveloping, with a tone that immediately captured your attention. Meetings under his leadership were clear and organized, and his instructions did not raise any questions. They were clear and thought out to the smallest detail. Sometimes he even took on tasks that he wasn't supposed to do to support the team or help someone meet deadlines. This gave me even more respect. Personally, he treated me with kindness, which I perceived as good luck. At first, in a new city and at a new place of work, I was a little nervous, trying to prove my worth. Ty noticed this and, without making a big deal out of it, managed to support me. A couple of phrases said at the right moment or praise for a completed task. This was enough to make me feel more confident. I understood that his affection could become not only moral support, but also an excellent help for my career. Ty seemed like someone I could learn a lot from, and I wasn't about to pass up this opportunity. During one of our conversations with Ty, which began on some trifle, he suddenly asked where I was from. When he learned that my wife and I were studying in North Carolina, he smiled broadly, as if remembering something pleasant from the past, and unexpectedly admitted that he himself had studied at Duke University. I froze for a second and then couldn't resist making a friendly joke. As a former student of our university, I, of course, could not ignore the traditional rivalry between the two educational institutions. Ty quickly adopted a humorous tone, and we laughed at how pointless but enjoyable it can be to maintain old university antagonisms. He said that during his studies he played football for the Duke team. With his impressive physique, it seemed logical, and I took a moment to imagine him in a football uniform, a leader on the field, inspiring his team in the same way he now inspires us at work. However, Ty added with a smile that he spent most of his free time not on his campus, but on the territory of our university. Why? I asked with sincere interest. Ty replied with a mischievous twinkle in his eye, Boy, the girls from Carolina were twice as beautiful as ours. Even us from Duke knew that. We both laughed, but in these words, perhaps, there was not only a joke, but also a piece of truth. Jill, like many of the girls on our campus, truly had that classic Southern beauty that is memorable. The conversation smoothly turned to Jill and I's first steps in New York. Ty asked with keen interest how we were settling into the city, how we were adapting to its frantic rhythm. I said that so far everything was going well, although, of course, not without difficulties. We both knew that New York was not a place to relax, especially when it came to finances. Having said that life here is not cheap, I smiled a little, expecting a standard phrase like, but it's worth it. Ty nodded in understanding, frowning slightly, and admitted that the costs in New York could indeed take even those accustomed to comfort by surprise. He noted that he himself went through this when he first moved here after university and gave me some practical tips on how to optimize your spending while still enjoying life in the city. His words sounded sincere, without mentoring, which I appreciated in him as a boss and a person. This conversation stayed with me. We not only shared memories of the past, but also became a little closer. Ty didn't seem like the typical boss who didn't care how his employees felt. He showed genuine interest, and this made our relationship warmer, even in a formal work environment. A few weeks later, Ty invited members of our team to his home for a social event on Saturday. We were asked to take our spouses and children with us, and most did so. We dressed simply, me in a polo and shorts, and my wife in a nice summer dress. She looked beautiful as always. Jill was petite, 157 centimeters tall, weighed 50 kilograms, with long blonde hair down to the middle of her back and an athletic figure. She always attracted attention. When we first came to visit Ty, his apartment literally stunned us. It was luxurious housing, fully consistent with the idea of a stylish and expensive life in New York. The apartment was located on the 50th floor of a modern skyscraper, with stunning views. Panoramic windows that took up an entire wall of the living room provided a postcard-perfect view of Central Park far below. The evening illumination of the city gave the impression that you were standing above a shining ocean of lights. This scene was so picturesque that it was impossible to take my eyes off it. and I had the feeling that we were in the backdrop of a movie about wealth and success. One of the main features of the apartment was the terrace. This small but cozy space with wooden decking and stylish outdoor furniture was perfect for parties. I could easily imagine Ty entertaining guests here, gathering small groups against the backdrop of magnificent views of the city. On the terrace, there was a high table with several chairs, a small bar with drinks, and a couple of large vases with live plants that added coziness and natural harmony to this modern setting. This place seemed to personify Ty himself, elegant, charismatic, but at the same time hospitable and comfortable. When I introduced my wife to Ty, he, as always, showed his natural charm. With a slight smile and warmth in his voice, he greeted her, complimented her on how beautiful she looked, and sincerely wished her a good time, both in his home and in New York itself. Jill, a little embarrassed by his attention, thanked him, and I was pleased to see how she felt more confident under such a friendly gaze. Ty knew how to create an atmosphere in which everyone felt comfortable, regardless of whether you were his colleague or just a guest. After a few minutes of casual conversation, Ty excused himself, saying that he had to pay attention to the other guests who had already gathered in the living room. We watched him move confidently around the room like a seasoned party host, expertly switching between groups of people. Even at this informal event, Ty remained himself charming, elegant, and attentive to everyone. One day, during one of the breaks at work, a conversation with colleagues unexpectedly turned to Ty. People in the office usually spoke of him with respect, sometimes even admiration, emphasizing his ability to conduct business and communicate with clients. However, that day I heard something different. Some colleagues began joking that they thought Ty was showing off his success too much, and mentioned that he was constantly bragging about his luxury apartment, life in Manhattan, and other trappings of status. Someone noted with obvious annoyance that few of us could afford to live in an apartment like his, overlooking Central Park. But of course, if your father is a property owner, that's a different story, one of them added with a wry smile. The others nodded as if this were a common fact. Rumors that Ty owes his housing not to his salary, but to his successful father, added to the list of office conversations that periodically surfaced in his address. They said that his father is a famous entrepreneur who owns several large real estate properties in the city, and that, in fact, the apartment in which Ty lives is not his merit, but simply a gift from the family. Some colleagues expressed this with such reproach, as if Ty was obliged to remind everyone that he did not earn this housing himself. I was surprised by this jealousy. Ty always struck me as a person who didn't force anything on anyone. His manner of communication did not include any hint of arrogance or desire to make himself superior to others. On the contrary, he looked like a man who simply enjoyed his life and shared it with others if they wanted to. For me, new to the company and to the city, Ty remained completely normal. Yes, his apartment was truly amazing, as was his lifestyle, but I never saw it as ostentatious or deliberately ostentatious. When I visited his home, he didn't focus on the gorgeous views or expensive furniture, but was more concerned with making sure everyone felt comfortable. Ty was friendly and open, and I did not notice him trying to present himself in any special light. I came to the conclusion that such talk about Ty was caused rather by envy. Perhaps it was difficult for colleagues to accept that someone could combine both a successful career and a stylish, eventful life. However, I decided not to delve into arguments or discussions. What was more important to me was what I saw with my own eyes. Ty was a great boss who helped the team, was able to motivate people, and remained friendly even in the face of successes that may have irritated some. My wife and I were out on the deck when Ty walked up and started talking to Jill. He heard that she was a big sports fan, and she nodded in response. Then she said I told her he played football for Duke and started making fun of him about it. Ty easily accepted her jokes, laughing when she talked about how the Duke team rarely wins football games. He admitted that in his time they did suffer defeats often. The jokes were harmless, and we laughed a lot. My wife was pretty competitive and didn't really like Duke, so I was impressed with how she held back considering Ty is my boss. As we were about to leave, Ty called us and offered us 2 tickets the next day to the home plate seats for a Yankees game. We happily agreed, since we usually sat in the farthest seats. We thanked him and my wife hugged him goodbye, and then we drove home. We had a great time at the game, and I sent Ty a photo of us with the game in the background, thanking him for the tickets. On Monday, I thanked him again and brought him homemade cookies that Jill had baked. Ty seemed genuinely touched by our gratitude. Over the next couple of weeks, I had lunch with Ty several times at his invitation. He admitted that he doesn't think many people on the team like him. I said that in my opinion, I was envious of his success. Ty agreed, but added that everything he achieved was earned through his own hard work. I completely agreed with this based on what I saw. From that point on, we became pretty close friends, and my wife and I sometimes spent time with Ty outside of work. He was single, never married, and my wife once asked him why. Ty revealed that he was once engaged, but it all fell apart, and he just didn't want to go through that again. He showed us a photo of his ex on his phone, and she was stunningly beautiful. She reminded me of my wife, to which Jill immediately remarked that they could very well be sisters. We were not surprised that she was white, and this did not raise any questions. When the college football season started, my wife and I loved to go to a pub or sports bar to have a drink and watch the games. Like I said, she loved sports, and this was a good way to get out of our small apartment without spending too much money. Ty joined us a few times when he had time and was always impressed by my wife's knowledge of the sport. One day, while we were watching the games, my wife reminded Ty that there was a game between Carolina and Duke the following week, and noted that Duke would be in trouble. Ty laughed and said you never know, which is why the game is being played, but that he has faith in Duke's chances this year. My wife suggested he make a friendly bet. Ty refused, saying that he was no fool, and since Carolina was considered the favorite, the odds were not in his favor. Then my wife suggested a simple solution: bet not only on the football game, but also on both basketball games between the teams during the season. Ty agreed because the odds were more even in basketball. When we tried to come up with a suitable bet, nothing really interesting came to mind. For Ty, anything monetary was unimportant because he didn't need anything. We decided that we would think about it during the week and decide before the game next Saturday. All my wife and I could offer were tickets to sporting events, which Ty seemed to have access to. But baseball season was over, and maybe he could get some good Knicks tickets or something like that. We decided to wait for Ty to come up with his idea. When we met on Saturday, we asked Ty if he had a proposal. He said yes, and we listened with interest. Ty said that if Caroline won, he would arrange with a friend at the Park Hotel to get us a free night in one of their suites overlooking the park. My wife almost jumped with delight. She agreed immediately, without even looking at me and without waiting to see what he would offer in return if Duke won. "What if Duke wins?" I asked. Ty responded that if Duke won, he would like to take photos of Jill wearing different clothes with Duke logos on them and keep them as a souvenir. She laughed and said, "You mean wearing a Duke t-shirt or something?" Ty replied, "Yeah, but I'll order a few things with Duke logos on them, and I'd love to see her wear them." My wife agreed and said, "It seems like an odd bet, but if that's what you want, I can do it. Besides, Caroline will win anyway." So the bet was made. Caroline led most of the game, and my wife enjoyed it, at times too much for my liking, as I knew things could change at the last moment. She kept saying how great it would be to spend the night at the Park Hotel and how she wanted to relax and be pampered in the huge bed. She had a smile all over her mouth. However, Duke cut the lead to 6 points late in the game. Carolina only needed to hold out for one more offense to win the game, but of course they didn't. Duke had a chance for one last attack, and of course they tied the score with 11 seconds left. Everything depended on the extra kick, and we needed at least a draw to stay in the game. My wife has only been cursing for the last 10 minutes, but has not said anything else. The kick was accurate, and after Hail Mary's last try the game was over. Ty just smiled while I shook my head and Jill covered her face with her hands. She hates losing. and she hated losing an argument even more. But she behaved with dignity, and Ty did not tease her in any way. Before we left, he said he would order things, and we could come to him next week to take photos. Jill asked him to be nice to her, hugged him and kissed him goodbye, and I shook his hand and said, "See you Monday." Jill had been complaining all week about having to wear an outfit with the Duke logo on it, but I thought it was no big deal, just a logo. She agreed, but said that she hated Duke so much that it felt like a betrayal. The following Saturday, we went to Ty to settle our dispute. He greeted us, and we chatted for a while, had snacks and drinks while we watched the football. Finally, my wife said, "Okay, let's get this over with." Ty told her that there were 4 sets of clothes on his bed with instructions. She had to open one numbered box at a time, follow the instructions, go out and pose for several photos. She sighed playfully and went into the bedroom. Ty looked at me and I just shrugged. It was her choice. A few minutes later, Jill returned dressed in her Duke cheerleader outfit, skirt, top, striped socks, and pom-poms. She didn't look happy and I laughed when I saw her, which made her smile. Ty said, "Finally, I saw a cute Duke cheerleader," which made us all laugh. It was true. Jill looked great. Ty took the camera and took some pictures of her posing with support for Duke. She was a real young lady. She went back for outfit number 2 and showed up in a low-cut Duke tee that showed off her cleavage and small, tight yoga pants. She looked sexy again and posed confidently for photos. When she came out in the 3rd outfit, my eyes literally popped out of my head. She was wearing a blue bikini with small devil logos on the triangles covering her breasts and a D in the middle of her bottoms. She paired it with high heels with a blue strap. "Now this is interesting," Ty said as Jill walked out, and I just froze, looking at her. She posed again, and this time she seemed really into it. When she turned to us, her gaze was so alluring that I felt excited. She posed with confidence and passion, and it was clear to everyone in attendance. Ty praised her and asked her to come back for the last box, adding that it would be the one she would like the most. When he said this, I wondered what could be better than the previous one. Then I heard Jill's voice from the bedroom. "I can't go out in this." "A bet is a bet," Ty replied. My jaw literally dropped when Jill came into view. She was wearing a nearly see-through blue jumpsuit that said "Go Duke" and was still wearing high heels. "Damn it," came out of my mouth, and Jill smiled at me. She looked a little embarrassed and was less confident when striking poses. Ty noticed that she was wearing more clothes than a bikini right now, which I guess was technically true. He reminded her that this was the last time and this would be the end of it. Jill sighed and then looked at us with a mischievous look while Ty took photos. "Pick up the teddy bear," Ty said. Jill did so, and I saw a small blue thong with the devil logo barely covering it. I was on edge when Ty said, "Perfect," and took a few more pictures. Then Ty said, "Okay, turn around, a few more photos, and that's it." When she turned around, we actually saw her almost naked ass, as the thong was hidden between her buttocks. I heard the camera click and tried to control my thoughts. Jill hurried back to the bedroom and changed into her regular clothes. About 10 minutes later, she came out, looking a little embarrassed, no doubt because she had just posed in such revealing outfits. We talked for a bit, and Ty said the photos would be a nice souvenir for him, which we all laughed about. When Jill and I returned home, we were overcome with passion. We made love for several hours, and I'm not sure I've ever experienced anything like this. She later admitted that she was so turned on during the photo shoot. After that, everything was fine. Ty and I maintained friendly relations. Nothing changed. Jill asked if he had looked at the photographs, and I assured her that he most likely had. She asked why I thought that, and I said because the pictures were really hot. I'm sure they could help him, you know what I mean, and Jill became embarrassed and covered her face and giggled. By this time, we had already started taking our own photographs, and it always led to great intimacy. I even posted some of the pictures on an adult website to show off her beauty. Jill worked a lot of nights, especially during the holiday period when there was a lot of demand in the retail industry. During this time, I was talking to people online, and many guys thought Jill was incredibly attractive. It turned me on that my wife was so beautiful, but I never showed her face or hinted that she was interested in anything like that. However, I was proud of her beauty and shared it. She had a lot of fans waiting for new pictures, and there was one guy with whom I got along especially well. He was also married, but his wife did not pay much attention to him, so we talked not only about my wife, but about life in general. After some time, Ty began dating a girl named Ashley, and this, of course, became one of the topics discussed among his colleagues. Ashley was stunningly beautiful, tall, slender, with thick brown hair that always lay perfectly, like something out of a magazine cover. Her style was sophisticated, but not pretentious. She knew how to emphasize her natural elegance. When I first saw it, I immediately noticed that there was something about it that was reminiscent of Ty's past. Even Jill noted that Ashley looks a bit like his ex-fiancée that we heard about from colleagues. Perhaps it was this similarity that captivated Ty, or perhaps he was simply looking for a woman so sophisticated and confident that would match his image. One day, Ty invited Jill and I to dinner with Ashley to get to know us better. That evening, we met in a small but sophisticated restaurant, where every element from the soft lighting to the delicate sound of live music created an atmosphere of comfort and sophistication. Ashley charmed us with her communication style from the very first minutes. She was friendly, easy to talk to, and clearly knew how to get along with different people. Jill, usually quite reserved with new acquaintances, quickly warmed up to her, and soon they were discussing something about interior design, which Ashley, as it turned out, was interested in. Ty looked relaxed and happy sitting next to her, which was nice to see. We laughed, remembering funny moments from life in New York and stories about life in North Carolina. The dinner was warm and relaxed, and as we said goodbye, I got the impression that these two had truly found something important in each other. Ty and Ashley's relationship developed rapidly. Within a few weeks of our dinner, it became obvious that this was not just a passing fad. They began to appear together more and more often at various events, and Ty, who usually tried to keep his personal life in the shadows, now happily talked about how he spent time with Ashley. They really seemed to suit each other, and this gave me only positive emotions. December, meanwhile, brought the long-awaited opportunity for Jill and I to return home to North Carolina to spend the holidays with family. We planned this trip in advance, looking forward to the moment when we would again see familiar places full of memories and feel the comfort that only native walls can give. On our first visit, we were greeted with a warm welcome. Jill's parents prepared a real feast with traditional Southern dishes that we had not tried for so long. On our second trip, we felt more relaxed and spent several days traveling around our favorite places in our state. We enjoyed walks along the forest paths, which were so lacking in New York, and gladly immersed ourselves in a calm and measured life, at least for a while. Returning home for the holidays was a breath of fresh air for us, a reminder of our roots and the fact that, despite our new life in the big city, our hearts still reach out to where we spent our childhood. When January began, there was a lot more work to do and college basketball season was in full swing, which has always been our favorite time of year. We saw Ty less often since he was spending time with his new girlfriend, but sometimes he would still join us to watch the games together. The first game between Carolina and Duke was approaching, and my wife hoped that Ty would again offer a night at the Park Hotel as a bet. Ty arrived about an hour before the big game started, and it was clear that he was upset about something. My wife asked what happened, and he said he and Ashley had broken up. We felt sorry for him, and Jill tried to console him. We told him that if he wasn't in the mood, he didn't have to stay for the game. Ty replied that he wanted to stay because we had a bet, and he needed to spend time with his friends. My wife asked if he would offer the same option with the Park Hotel as a bet, and Ty agreed. When we asked what he wanted in return, he couldn't seem to decide. After hesitating a little, Jill told him to just say what he was thinking, and if it didn't suit us, we'd refuse. Then he admitted that he had planned to take Ashley with him to Durham for the second game between Carolina and Duke, and had already bought plane tickets and tickets for the game, but now the trip was canceled. He said, a little embarrassed, "I need a companion for that weekend." My wife and I looked at each other, and then Jill looked at Ty and asked, "Do you want us to find you a companion, or are you asking if I will go with you?" Ty replied, "I could find someone for myself, but I don't want just a random companion. I'd rather you come with me as a friend." Jill said she wasn't sure and looked at me, and we both didn't know what to say. We didn't want to offend Ty, since he was a good friend, but the idea didn't seem entirely successful to us. It is one thing to accompany him to some event in the city, and quite another to go with him to another city. Ty continued, "The plane leaves on Friday morning. I plan dinner at a good restaurant in the evening, then the game on Saturday and back on Sunday morning. I will be happy to rent you a separate hotel room." Jill said we needed a few minutes to talk about it, and Ty said he needed to call. When he left, she looked at me and asked, "What do you think?" My biggest fear was that if we said no, Ty would think we didn't trust him, and I didn't want to upset him in this way, although it was quite a big request. In the end, we decided Ty was a great guy and didn't want to upset him, thinking there was a reason why we turned him down, plus we were hoping Carolina would win anyway. When Ty returned to the table, Jill told him we accepted his bet, and we saw his first smile of the evening. More beer and wings were brought to the table, and we all got ready for what was going to be another intense game on Tobacco Road. We agreed, and a tense first half made me nervous, as Duke led by 2 on Carolina's home court. Ty was calm as always, while knots formed in my stomach, but that was only because of the game. I wasn't even thinking about the bet itself. I wanted Caroline to win, and so did my wife. Luck was on our side, and the Heels had an incredible second half, ultimately winning by double digits. Jill and I were excited, but we tried not to show it too much since Ty was with us. He was as gracious in defeat as in victory, and said he would keep his part of the agreement. The next day, I didn't see Ty at work, but that evening at home, I received a letter from him. He said that he could not give us a room at the Park Hotel, but hoped that we would agree to alternative arrangements at the Plaza Hotel. Jill was delighted and more than happy to accept the award. We said that would be great, and Ty sent an email saying everything was ready for us for Saturday night and included our booking confirmation. He wrote that we would be taken care of and that he hoped we would have a great time and that he would see us early next week as he was going away on business for a couple of days. The Plaza Hotel exceeded all of Jill's expectations and more. We were given a room overlooking Central Park and had a great time. The first thing we did was use this big comfy bed and enjoy time with each other. Everything about the hotel feels different, not to mention its elegance. After showering and relaxing in soft bathrobes, we dressed for the evening, and there was a knock on the door. Ty arranged for us to have exquisite room service with appetizers, champagne, and a note, "Enjoy, go ahead, Duke." We had a laugh and then enjoyed the evening for another hour. We had dinner in a luxurious restaurant and then went on a carriage ride through the park. It was a little chilly, and they covered us with a blanket. Jill looked at me with her gorgeous eyes, and I just couldn't take my eyes off her. She said, "Am I all you need?" "Of course," I replied. "You are everything I want and more than I deserve." "Then let's make this evening unforgettable," she replied. "Tell me something you've never said that would make you happy." I was a little confused and didn't know what to answer. Nothing came to mind. "You already make me happy," I said. "Do you have any fantasies or desires? Because this evening was mine, and now I want it to be yours too," Jill said. I thought about the photos I showed people and the conversations I had online. I never told her about it and was afraid she would be upset if I shared. But perhaps there will be no better moment for frankness, so I decided to take a risk. "I like to show you off," I said. "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen." She looked at me in surprise. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I love showing you off to others. Ever since the night we took pictures at Ty's, I can't stop. I hope you don't get mad, but I've been sharing these pictures on the internet. They all think you're amazing. It's all anonymous, and I never showed your face, but people see your body and react the same way I do." Jill was silent for a while. Why didn't you tell me about this earlier? I didn't know how you would feel about it, and I wasn't even sure why I liked it so much, I replied. Are you upset? She smiled. No, it's nice and even a bit of a compliment. As long as no one knows who I am, I think it's harmless. I smiled with relief. So you want to show me off tonight? She asked. Yes, I replied. How do we do this? Jill asked. I just need to set up my computer and connect to the internet. It's simple, I replied. Jill leaned over, kissed me deeply, and snuggled close to me as our carriage ride ended. We soon returned to our room. I have a surprise for you, Jill said. So go ahead, set up everything you need while I freshen up and come back. My heart beat faster. I took out my computer, started it, went to the site under our profile, and I couldn't help but be excited. A few minutes later, I heard Jill come out of the bathroom and turned around to see her. If a man could be rendered speechless by a single glance, this would be the case. My wife stood in front of me in the most mesmerizing black lingerie I had ever seen. Lacy in places, see-through in others. Her curves were highlighted perfectly, and I noticed garters, panties, and a pair of bright red heels that matched her lipstick and nails. Jill slowly walked towards me, allowing me to enjoy the sight of her while my eyes couldn't take my eyes off her. She stopped in front of me and said, "What do I look like? Do you think your friends will approve?" I couldn't answer her in words and just nodded as she came up and kissed me. She touched me, and I felt her slight smile as we kissed. I think I have the answer, she said. I spent the next 10-15 minutes showing her the site, our profile, and how everything works. She was reading the comments people had left about her photos, and I could see that she was enjoying it and a little turned on by it. From time to time, she would ask to see the profile of the person who left the comment, and I began to notice that profiles with attractive photos piqued her interest. I guess I couldn't blame her. She made comments here and there in response to some of them. He's cute. Wow. Is this even real? Every comment she made me shiver and turned me on even more. Finally, my wife asked how I was going to show her, and I said I could turn on the webcam. She could dance, undress, and do whatever she wanted. First I will dance, she said. I turned on the music and explained where she should stand so that her body could be seen, but not her face, and then I turned on the webcam. It didn't take us long to build an audience. The messages and reactions that came in were overwhelming as people watched my beautiful wife dance seductively a few meters away from me. I tried to read her the comments that came in, and they were both admiring and a little cheeky, which only turned us both on even more. Everyone wanted her to continue, so she asked me what I wanted. I replied that the choice is hers. She said it was my fantasy, and I needed to tell her what I wanted. Do you want your friends to see more of me? She asked with a smile. Yes, was all I could get out. She walked up to me and approached the computer, turning her back to the camera, moving her hips slightly, and began to dance around me, slowly taking off her clothes. I felt my head spin as notification sounds started coming from the computer as people connected and posted their comments. Jill started dancing for me. I tried my best to maintain my composure. We were both looking at the screen when she clicked on one of the messages and a new video camera appeared on the screen. At the other end was a man with an impressive physique who, like us, did not show his face. Jill looked at the screen and slowly walked back towards me, watching what was happening. She leaned towards me and whispered something. I did as she asked, and moments later, we saw the man on the other end get his pleasure and turn off the camera. God, that was hot, Jill said. When it was over, the screen went dark, and my wife looked at me, a little confused. Turn it off, please, she said. I quickly turned off the camera and disconnected us. She sat on the chair, looking tired and exhausted, but her eyes were still sparkling. Are you okay? I asked. I'm not sure, she replied. Are you upset that we did this? I asked. She paused, then replied, No, that's not the point. It was an incredible experience, and I really enjoyed seeing you live out your fantasy. But I think at some point we crossed the line. What do you mean? I asked. I think that last person, Perhaps it was not just a casual spectator, she said, looking at me. What do you want to say? I asked, feeling dizzy. I think it was Ty. I just know it, she said, and I felt a strange feeling come over me. It had never occurred to me, but now I began to doubt it. It can't be Ty, I finally said. What are the chances of that? Honey, I'm sure it was him, she answered confidently. I returned to the computer and opened the site again. What are you doing? My wife asked. Well, I'm going to see if I can find this profile. I remember the nickname, and let's see if you're right, I said. I entered the name into the search, and the profile was immediately found. The main profile photo didn't have a face, which didn't give us any specific clues. My wife joined me, and we began discussing details. The profile said the person lived in New York, and the physical description matched Ty, which made me nervous. We started looking through the photos, and one by one they showed parts of the body, breasts, abs, etc. The last photo made us both freeze. It was a photo of a woman wearing a blue thong with the Duke logo, and the caption on the photo read, "The woman of my dreams. Sad to see her go." Now we have no questions left. We looked at Jill's image on the screen, and it became clear. My wife had just put on a show for Ty. We looked at each other with blank expressions. Only one question remained. Did he know that the woman of his dreams had just given him a show? I turned off the computer, and Jill and I silently began to collect the clothes scattered on the floor. She went to the bathroom, and I put my boxers back on and plopped down on the sofa in the room. I sat there in a daze until my wife came out of the bathroom. She was wearing only a t-shirt and panties. I thought, is there anything she doesn't look amazing in? She walked over to the sofa, I patted my knees, and she sat down on them. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Actually, I'm not sure," I replied. "My mind feels like it's floating right now." "Yes, mine too," said Jill. "Do you think he knows?" "I don't know," I said. "Part of me says it can't be, and the other part thinks maybe he knows. All I know is that we know for sure it was him who was watching, and he sees you as a woman. Your dreams." "How do you feel knowing this?" Jill asked. "Well, he couldn't have achieved what he did by being a stupid man," I said with a smile. "What's not to like about you? I can't blame him, that's for sure." "What are we going to do? Are we going to act like nothing happened?" Jill asked. "That's probably the best thing for now. Let's just act normal around him and see if he talks about it. That's probably the best thing to do." Jill agreed and said that her fantasy night had been wonderful, but there was still something missing. I didn't need another hint. I took her to bed, and we made love again. The image of her and Ty couldn't leave my head. After we kissed for a while, she turned over and fell asleep pretty quickly, and I continued to replay the events of the evening in my head. I couldn't sleep, and an hour later I got up and turned on the computer again. I went to the website and saw that we had literally hundreds of posts. Most of them were sent while we were doing our webcam show and were mostly short compliments or comments about how hot Jill was. When I got to the last message, I recognized the small profile picture. It was from Ty's same account. His message came after the show had ended, and I read it, feeling my heart beat faster. The message said, "Thank you for the incredible experience. You are absolutely gorgeous, and I can only imagine how amazing you are in real life. I understand that there is no opportunity to experience this in person since you are married, but please know how beautiful you are and let your husband understand how lucky he is, Zoxo." I read the message again, trying to see if there was anything in it that would indicate whether Ty knew it was Jill he was communicating with. It was difficult to figure it out. My heart said he didn't know, but my intuition said otherwise. In any case, there was nothing in his message that could be interpreted as an attempt to do anything. I should have deleted this message so Jill would never see it, but I didn't. The next morning we woke up, had quick sex, and then continued the fun in the shower. We didn't want to leave the hotel until the last moment. We didn't discuss the night before, but I was sure Jill was thinking about it the same way I was. That evening at home, my wife offered to do something nice for Ty for going above and beyond expectations in meeting the terms of the bet. My heart skipped a beat when I thought about what she meant. She noticed my reaction, smiled, came up to me, kissed me, then laughed. "No, not that, dear," she said. "I was thinking of baking him cookies. I'll be back soon." With these words, she took her purse and left the house. 20 minutes later, she returned with bags from the store. She cooked dinner for us and spent the next couple of hours baking cookies for Ty. She put it in a container and wrote a note. "We had a great time, thank you. Go Tar Heels." I realized that there was a hidden subtext in these words, but the note looked funny and good-natured. The next day, I took the cookies to work and left them on Ty's desk. He was not in the office that day, but showed up on Tuesday morning. I tried to talk to him, but he was very busy. He thanked me for the cookies and asked me to convey my gratitude to Jill, saying that we would definitely talk again later. When I got home, Jill asked how it went and if Ty had given any hint that he knew anything. I replied that not really, although I had the feeling that he pulled away a little. Perhaps he was just busy after being away for a few days. We were both dying to know if he knew, but unless we asked directly, the answer was unlikely to ever be known. We were hoping things would go back to normal as Ty was a good friend to us, and we loved spending time with him. Ty seemed a little strange throughout the week, but on Friday we went out to lunch together, and he didn't mention anything and things became more normal. I asked if he was okay, and he said yes, just a lot of work. I suggested we meet on Saturday to watch the games, but he said he couldn't because he was visiting family. Meanwhile, Jill and I had sex every night, and it was just passion, without unnecessary conversations. I knew what I was thinking all this time, but I didn't dare ask Jill what was going on in her head. I decided not to raise this topic. The following week, Ty turned down an offer to meet after work for a beer. The next day, I told him that Jill was starting to think he was avoiding us. He laughed and said that was not so. So I suggested we meet on Saturday night for dinner and drinks since the Carolina and Duke games were on at the same time and we could watch both. He agreed. I told Jill that Ty had agreed to meet us on Saturday. She wondered how it would go. After all, she hasn't seen Ty since then. I asked her if everything would be okay, and she said yes, everything would be okay. We met up with Ty that Saturday night at our usual spot. I wondered if Jill would dress especially for him, but she didn't. She really acted as if nothing was bothering her. Maybe it was just me who was nervous. I thought that everything had quickly returned to normal, as if nothing unusual had happened since the last time the three of us saw each other. Of course, the thought was in my head, and I knew it was in Jill's head too. The only question that remained was whether Ty knew, and whether this thought was in his head too. As Ty stood up to go to the bathroom, I looked at Jill. I didn't say anything, but she, looking at me, replied. "He knows," she said. "How did you know?" I asked. "I just know," she replied. "He doesn't look me in the eye. He's nervous. He's trying to act natural, but it's obvious that it's difficult." "Are you going to tell him something?" I asked. "Yes, we need to bring this to light, and the sooner the better," she said. Ty returned, and we started chatting again while watching the games. During the break, we turned our attention to each other, away from the TVs. Finally, my wife stopped talking and looked straight at Ty. "Ty," she began, "I need to ask you something, and it might be a little awkward, but I think you know what I'm going to ask." Ty lowered his head. Now I understood exactly what he knew. "When did you find out?" Jill asked. Ty continued to look down, taking several deep breaths. Finally, he looked up at her and then at me. "I've known for a long time," he replied. "From the moment I saw the first photo you posted on the site, I knew it was you. I immediately recognized the birthmark on your buttock because I already had my own photos of it. I checked every day to see if something was new, and I was happy every time. And then that night when you turned on the camera, I just—" Ty stopped, and no one said a word. "I'm so sorry, Jill," he finally said. Then he looked at me. "I'm sorry. As your friend, I should never have done this." Almost a minute of silence passed before Jill broke the silence. "Ty, it's okay. You're still our friend. We value you and don't want this to change anything, she said. And don't blame yourself. We were in an open space, and it just happened. Ty looked at her and asked, "When did you find out?" Jill looked at me, then looked a little embarrassed, and looked back at Ty. "From the moment I heard your voice," she said. It took me by surprise. I looked at her, and she met my gaze with a sad expression on her face. I realized that she already had her suspicions after that night, and she knew for sure when we saw his profile photo, but now she admitted that she knew before things got out of control. She looked at me and said, "Sorry." "Why didn't you stop it then?" asked Ty. "Why you?" Jill answered. "I just couldn't," he replied. "I never wanted you to find out. I didn't send you any messages. But when I saw you on camera that night, I just couldn't help but say what I thought. I posted at least 10 comments before you responded and clicked on my profile. I never thought that you would open my profile, so I just said everything that I knew I could never say to your face." We were both stunned. Ty continued, "And when you answered, I didn't know what to do. I tried to act calm and confident, but inside I was shaking. I couldn't resist my one chance to be with you, even if it came this way. I'm so sorry, and even though it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen, I sincerely wish it had never happened." He paused before finishing. "If you want, I can leave." "No, don't," I replied, before taking my own dramatic pause. "But I have one question for you. The message you sent us later that night, was it addressed to Jill? Did you want her to know it was you?" Now it was Jill's turn to look at me with confusion. "What message?" she asked. "Ty sent us a note that night. I didn't delete it, so it's still there. I just didn't tell you about her." I looked at Ty, waiting for an answer. I just wanted her to know that I was thinking about her, but I didn't want her to know that it was me. I wanted to say what I wanted to say and move on with my life, knowing that I told her how beautiful and amazing she was. Well, I mean, she is. Jill began to blush, and it seemed to me that my heartbeat could probably be heard throughout the entire bar. Ty also looked confused, but finally spoke again, looking at Jill. "So you never answered. If you knew it was me, why did you continue? You could have left the chat as soon as you realized, and then nothing would have happened." Jill thought about her answer for a minute. "Because I didn't want to stop either," Jill confirmed. "I was fulfilling a fantasy for my husband, and I was completely engrossed in it. And when I realized that it was you, I felt something that I had never experienced before. It was so forbidden, and at that moment I didn't think that you knew that it was me, so I didn't consider it anything serious. From the very night you saw me in my panties, all sorts of thoughts were spinning in my head. I couldn't take my eyes off you. Afterwards, I felt pleasure. I realized it was a mistake." Ty broke the silence again. "Look, I love you both. Honestly, both of you. Jill, you're beautiful, funny, and I love being around you." He paused, his voice a little choked, and then looked at me. "And you are one of my best friends. For some reason, I don't have many friends, maybe because of situations like this. But I really appreciate both of you. I admire your marriage, your unity, and the way you look together. And I envy what you have. I would never forgive myself if I caused the destruction of what you have. I don't even know what else to say." There seemed to be a tear in his eye as he finished. I wanted to understand what was going on in Jill's head right now, but I wanted to make sure Ty knew that everything would be okay. I extended my hand to him. "Don't worry," I said. "Everything is fine." He smiled, extended his hand, and shook mine. Jill also had tears in her eyes, but she stood up, walked over to Ty, and, putting her hands on his face, leaned over. "I'm flattered by everything you said," she said, "and I think you are an amazing person." Then she leaned even lower and kissed him on the lips, which came as a surprise to him and to me. After the kiss, she smiled at Ty, walked over to me, extended her arms, and I pulled the chair back so she could sit on my lap. She hugged me and kissed me, this time long and passionately. "And you're even more amazing," she whispered in my ear. She chuckled before whispering again, "Try to hold back, and I'll make it worthwhile for you later." Jill remained sitting on my lap and waved to the waitress. When she came over, Jill ordered 3 shots, and we went back to watching basketball. Both games were already in the second half. Our attention was diverted earlier. The shots arrived, and Jill gave each of us one before proposing a toast. "I am such a lucky woman. I have a husband like you." She kissed me on the cheek. "And such a wonderful friend like you," she said, standing up and kissing Ty on the cheek, and then returning to my lap. "So let's drink to friendship, a crazy night of nudity, and a return to normal life." Jill picked up her shot, and we all did the same and drank. Ty started laughing, and Jill asked what made him laugh so much. "Well, now that everything has come out, I think I can tell you why Ashley and I broke up," he said. "One night we had sex. It was very passionate, but I called her Jill. I have never seen a woman so angry in my life. She pushed me away, said that she knew everything, and left." Jill began rocking her hips on me the entire time Ty was telling his story, and when she finished laughing, the thought of Ty thinking about my wife while he was with another woman, as well as her movements on me, proved too much. She smiled slightly at the corners of her lips before leaning over and whispering to me, "Don't worry, honey. I thought this story was hot too." From the moment we got home, our clothes started flying off of us, and we didn't even make it to the bedroom. The rest of the week turned into a real marathon for us. We have never done this so often in our lives. Instead of a couple times a week, it happened a couple times a day. Our sex life has clearly gained new momentum thanks to recent events. During sex, Jill would often tell me something about how she liked to show herself off, and would sometimes mention Ty's name. Whatever it was, it worked for both of us. We saw Ty again when we got together for the happy birthday, and everything seemed to be back to normal. No one talked about that night or our conversation, and at work everything was unchanged too. The following week, Ty met us again on a Wednesday evening for drinks and a quick bite. The Duke game was shown on the TV screen, and we snuck glances at the match. Then the screen showed graphics of Duke's next game, which of course was against Carolina. You wait all year to see this game, and then they play twice in 1 month. We all noticed this, but no one wanted to say anything until Jill started laughing. "Maybe we won't make a bet this time," she giggled. We all smiled and nodded in agreement. Duke's game ended, and they won again, beating Clemson comfortably. The coach was interviewed about the upcoming game with Carolina and noted that they will need top-level fan support to win. With these words, Jill turned to Ty. "Are you still going to the game?" she asked. "I'm not sure," he replied. "Why?" she continued. "I still haven't found anyone to go with, and I have a lot to do here," Ty said. "I think I can sell tickets to someone there, if anything. I don't have to decide right now. I can wait until Friday." I still can't explain what happened next. It was one of those moments when your mouth speaks before your brain has time to process everything. I looked at Jill, and the words seemed to come from someone else. "You should go," I said. She looked at me like I was crazy, and Ty was left with an unreadable expression on his face. "Well, if you want," I added, trying to smooth the situation over. "Ty has tickets, and it would be a shame if they disappeared." I was already in it, and I knew it. Each new word pulled me deeper. My intentions were pure when I said this, nothing untoward. But as soon as the words were spoken, everything that had happened between the three of us came to the surface, and I couldn't take it back. I felt trapped. How am I going to get out of this now? "I don't think that's a good idea," Jill said. This confirmed that I was not the only one who was aware of the sexual tension that now existed between us all. "Thanks for the offer, but maybe now is not the best time," Ty said. "Yes, that's right," I agreed. "I just wanted to find a solution for you. I didn't think it through. I didn't want to put you two in this situation." "It's not that I wouldn't like to go," Jill said. "I've always wanted to go to the Carolina Duke game in Cameron. It's just, you know." Damn, I thought. I almost got out of it, but I started talking again, and now it was still hanging in the air. I noticed Jill looking at me with a look that clearly said, "Shut up, you idiot." Ty stood up and said, "Well, it's early to get up, guys. As always, it was nice to see you." We got up, said goodbye, and went our separate ways. Thank God Ty got me out of my own mess without letting the conversation go any further. On the way back home, Jill snapped at me. "What were you thinking when you said that?" "Sorry," I replied. It came out of my mouth before I could think it through, and then I tried to fix it. At home, we started getting ready for bed. I stood in my boxers and watched Jill brush her teeth at the sink in her t-shirt and panties. The only thing I could think about was how beautiful she was. She noticed me looking at her and rolled her eyes. When she finished, she walked past me, took my hand, and told me to follow her. "I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and I want you to answer honestly, okay?" she said. I was nervous, but answered. "Okay, do you have to be naked to do this?" "Yes," she answered quickly. After a pause, she continued. "Now that you've had time to think about everything, do you want me to go to the game with Ty?" I didn't know how to answer. "Do you want to go?" I asked. "That's not what I'm asking you," she said. "Give me an honest answer." I tried to answer, but couldn't find the words. I felt like my body was betraying me, and I cursed myself for it. Jill noticed this. "You understand what can happen," she continued, "isn't it?" I took as long as I could before answering. "I trust you," I said. "That's it," said Jill. "So you're putting everything on me?" "No, that's not what I meant," I replied stammeringly. "Forget what was in your head before," she said. "Now, knowing everything we both know, seeing what we both saw, and knowing what Ty thinks of me, do you want me to go to the game with him?" I couldn't answer. The truth was that I didn't have an answer. I didn't want her to go because I knew what would probably happen. She saw my confusion, but my body seemed to have no doubts. "Well, I think I have the answer for now," Jill said. "One of the options would be easy to say, the other would be much more difficult. I'll give you time to think, in case you change your mind. And now I'll go to bed." She kissed me and told me she loved me, and I remained sitting on the couch, still in the same naked state, while my mind wandered in different directions. Jill went into the bedroom, and I just stared after her. What's happening to me? Could these seemingly innocent desires to show off your wife to someone else lead to her ending up in the arms of another man? And did I really want this? Was this the beginning of the journey, or did everything work out because of the unexpected circumstances that Ty and I found ourselves in? When I came to my senses, I was overcome with regret. What's wrong with me? I couldn't risk my marriage. I got up and quietly went to the bedroom. The next night at dinner, we didn't talk much. After the dishes were put away, we settled down on the couch to watch TV. I felt like the North Carolina basketball team was using the four corners strategy. I was leading the score and trying to stall the clock. At 9 p.m., Jill picked up the remote control, pressed the mute button, and looked at me. "Oh crap," I thought. The opponent intercepted the ball. "Well," she began, "have you changed your mind?" This is the moment of truth. All I had to do was score the free throw and end the game. But I froze. It felt like the connection between my brain and my vocal cords had been severed. My brain was screaming at my mouth to say, "Yes, I changed my mind. I don't want her to go." But I couldn't squeeze out a word. Jill just looked at me. What did she want me to say? Deep down I knew, or thought I knew. She wanted me to say that I had changed my mind and didn't want her to go. And I realized that I was right when she stood up with an expression of complete indifference, as if I had let her down. She took my phone and started looking for something in it. She pressed a few buttons and brought it to her ear, and I stood motionless and listened to only the part of the conversation that I could hear. "No, it's Jill," she said. "I use his phone." "So what time is our flight?" "No, I'm serious." "Yes, he wants me to go." "Fine. This sounds great. I'll meet you there." "Yes, I think we'll have a great time." "Good night, Ty." Jill hung up, returned the phone to the table, and looked at me. I still didn't move or say a word. It was the most awkward moment of my life. She literally begged me with her eyes to say something, but I couldn't. "Well, I guess I better go get my things," she said and headed to the bedroom. To say I couldn't sleep that night would be an understatement. I stayed on the couch, lying there almost all night. I heard my wife packing her things in the other room. I didn't have the courage to go in there and stop her. And even more so, I didn't want to see what exactly she was packing for him. But that didn't stop me from guessing. Did she collect beautiful things or everyday ones? Hot underwear? Or weren't you going to put on panties for him at all? I saw the lights go out in our room and heard her get into bed. I lay motionless on the couch, my stomach in knots, my heart pounding, my thoughts wandering. The images in my head remained the same as the last 2 weeks' time making love to my wife. By 5 in the morning, I seemed to wake up. Realizing that I had an appointment at 7 in the morning, I headed to the bedroom. I saw my wife's bag neatly placed next to her dresser. I wanted to open it, but didn't. She was still fast asleep. I went into the shower, spending what seemed like an eternity in there, letting the hot water try to restore my strength. It didn't help. When I was dressed and ready to leave, I walked over to her side of the bed. I forgot to tell her I had to leave early and didn't want to wake her up, but I also didn't want her to leave. It seemed to me that too much was left unsaid. It was all my fault. I looked at her while she slept, and millions of memories and images flashed before my eyes. The blanket only covered half of her body, and I was looking at her right side as she lay on her stomach. Her gorgeous legs and perfect butt in her panties seemed to be staring back at me. I did the only thing that came to mind. I leaned over, kissed her on the cheek, and told her I loved her. My meeting was painful. It dragged on, and I could hardly hear what was being said. My mind was somewhere else. I was wondering what was wrong with me if I allowed my wife to go away for the weekend with Ty, knowing that she would sleep with him and most likely spend most of the time doing just that. By the time the meeting ended, I was rushing across town to get to the office for another meeting. I barely made it and didn't have time to call Jill like I had planned. I thought I could at least leave her a note. The second meeting was no less painful, and in the middle of it, I had an epiphany. I didn't want my wife to go. I didn't want her to spend the weekend with Ty. I didn't want her to sleep with Ty. I kept looking at my watch, waiting for the meeting to end so I could call her and rush home. The meeting ended a little after 11 a.m. As soon as I left the room, I took out my phone and called Jill. The call went straight to voicemail. She never turns off her phone, and then it dawned on me she was already on the plane. I walked up to the secretary's desk and asked if anyone had seen Ty. Betty, our secretary, said that he called in the morning and said that he would not come today and asked not to bother him. I asked where he went, but she said she didn't know, only adding that he had never sounded so happy. I immediately left the office and rushed home, hoping that I was not too late. I'm late. Jill had already left. Her bags were also gone. I tried calling her again, but again without success, still the same voicemail. There was a note on the refrigerator. I'll text you later when I can. Hope you have a good weekend. Love, Jill. That's all. Will she text me later if she finds time? Did I really fall so quickly in her eyes that my own wife could write to me only if she had the opportunity? Don't call. Can't find time to talk. Just write a text if you get a chance. I practically collapsed on the kitchen floor, leaning against the refrigerator. What have I done? I finally got up from the floor and went to the bedroom. The air still smelled of her perfume. It tore my heart. Then I saw something that made me cry. Jill left her wedding ring on the dresser. I was depressed and had no one to blame but myself. I'm the one who brought us to this. I returned to the couch, overwhelmed with emotion. I tried calling her again, but to no avail. What could she be doing now, I thought. She was already there, with Ty. I've waited too long. She gave me opportunities to stop her. But when I left for work this morning, I actually signed my own death sentence. I woke up a few hours later. It seems that after a sleepless night and overwhelming emotions, I was simply exhausted. It was 5 p.m. I collected my thoughts and reached for the phone. No missed calls or messages. Taking a deep breath, I dialed Jill again. The phone rang and rang. She didn't answer. I couldn't decide whether to leave a message or keep calling until she answered. And what should I say in the message? Should I say that I ruined everything? Should I ask her not to do this? Pretend everything is fine and hold on? I had no idea what to do. When I heard the voicemail beep, it brought me back to reality, and I could only say, "Call me." Time seemed to stand still as the minutes and hours dragged on agonizingly long. I tried calling again, but she didn't answer again. Finally, at 9 p.m., I received a message. "Are you home?" I replied, "Yes. Can you call me?" Jill replied, "No, just wait for my next message." Why couldn't she call, I thought. 30 minutes later, another message arrived. "Sit down at your computer, go to the website, and open Ty's profile. Text me when you're there." I did it without thinking too much. Everything happened automatically. I turned on the computer, went to the website, and found Ty's profile. It was added to the hot list, and not by me, so it was easy to find. I wrote to my wife that I was already there. Her answer came quickly. "Open his webcam. Text me when it works." For a moment, I felt relieved. She wants to talk and see me, I thought. I texted her that the camera was on and I could see the hotel room. He looked beautiful. There was a large bed in the distance, and the computer was clearly on the room's desktop. The next message read, "Watch until I write to you again." I followed her instructions, now a little hesitantly. The next thing I saw was a black man, obviously Ty, walking into frame. I saw him from the shoulders down. He then took off his clothes, standing with his back to the camera and facing the bed. Then he turned and walked straight towards the camera. He walked right up to the screen, as if adjusting the camera, and then walked out of frame. It hit me like a ton of bricks. My wife was going to make me watch. She was going to have sex with Ty on camera, and she wanted me to see it. Moreover, any of the site users could observe this. I think that's why Ty set up the camera so their faces wouldn't be visible. My eyes were glued to the screen. A few moments later, I saw Ty leading Jill to the bed. I couldn't get a good look at her as he obscured her most of the time, but I noticed she was wearing a cheerleading uniform with the Duke logo on it. How ironic, I thought, that we are back where it all began. They had sex. Ty has just won over the woman of his dreams with incredible success. The woman who has been my dream since the day I met her. Then the screen went dark. About a minute later, I received a text from Jill. "Have you looked at everything?" I replied, "Yes." Her answer came quickly. "Tell me how you feel right now, and be 100% honest." I knew what I wanted to answer, but I also knew that I had pushed her to do so. If I told her about this now, she might get angry. In the end, I didn't stop her, and confessing now might push her even further towards Ty. Maybe I can save what's left. But in the end, I decided to say what I had to say. "I'm heartbroken," I replied. Her answer, "Okay, I was hoping you would say that." What did she mean? Did she want to humiliate me? I didn't know what to say or how to respond. Doesn't she love me more? There was a knock on the door. Great, I thought. I didn't open it, but the knock was repeated. My face looked terrible red from tears and pain, and in general I looked unwell. But the knocking continued, and I went to open the door. Jill stood in the doorway with a bag in her hand. To say that I was puzzled is an understatement. She just looked at me lovingly as I tried to figure out what the hell was going on. When I started to speak, she interrupted. "It wasn't me," she said, "but I needed to know, and this was the only way." I stepped away from the door so Jill could enter. She put the bags down and kissed me as I closed the door. "I don't understand anything," I replied. "It's always been a fantasy for me to have sex with Ty," Jill said. "I love this fantasy, but I never wanted to make it a reality. I needed to be sure of how you felt, and although you couldn't say it in words, I knew that deep down you didn't want it either. But until you come face to face with it, you would never understand where the line is between fantasy and reality." "But what did I just watch?" I asked her. "You watched Ty have sex with one of his ex-girlfriends who looks like me," she replied. "I talked to Ty about this a few days ago. He realized what was happening and felt terrible. I told him that I need to know how you feel, and more importantly, you need to understand your feelings. So we came up with this plan." He called his ex, who agreed to participate. She obviously didn't mind, I said. Yes, I know. I watched it too, Jill said with a sly smile. They're just in a hotel somewhere in the city. I smiled and hugged her. So, is everything okay? Jill asked. Yes, and I'm so sorry. I waited too long to try to stop you, I replied. It's okay, honey, she said. We need to accept our fantasies and share them, and I think that's healthy. But for now, I think it's best to act them out on each other, isn't it? I just smiled and hugged her tighter. We went into the bedroom and just held each other. We slept all night and morning. When we woke up, Jill turned to me and kissed me. Do you know what day it is today? She asked. Saturday, was my weak answer. Yes, said Jill, but it's also the day of the Carolina versus Duke game, and we're meeting up with Ty tonight to watch the game, and this is our treat for helping us out yesterday. Our treat? I asked. He had sex with the girl of his dreams who looks like you. Maybe he should treat us. Well, who knows what the argument will be today, Jill replied. Damn, I thought. It all starts again. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.